Okay, well, so welcome to the second episode of the Career Pursuit podcast. And on this podcast, we're going to be highlighting interesting career paths. And today I have definitely an interesting one here with my friend and networking partner, Arieze, the Colorblind Magician.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem, dude. So thanks for coming. What I really like and what I wanted to highlight about your career path is kind of the non-linear direction that you went. So I kind of want to open up with what did you study in college and what are you doing now?
Well, yeah, so I actually went to the University of Waterloo. I graduated from system design engineering. And what I'm doing right now, I'm in the process of a transition. I still have a bit of a day job. I'm working as a project manager in the IT field for a company called VersaPay.
Nice.
But aside from that, and this is the plan for really summer, I'm going to be moving over into being a full-time magician.
Incredible, and that's kind of what I wanted to highlight was the transition from obviously being project manager to going into magician. What made you take this jump? What gave you the faith?
Well, honestly, at some point, I just kind of realized that I had to trust myself and just do it. But a bit more about how I ended up getting there. It's kind of interesting. So graduating from school, I always thought that I was going to be in the construction field.
Mm-hmm.
So I had my first job out of school as a sales engineer. I was working for a company out in Waterloo, and I'll be honest, I hated my life.
Yeah.
So I did it for about a year, and at the end of that year, I actually got fired.
Really?
Yeah. So it was a tough one to kind of wrap my head around. What ended up happening was I went on vacation. And they called me while I was on vacation, and they said, "Hey, we're letting you go."
What a vacation! Where? How did they bring that combo up? Because usually when you get like a request to like do something on vacation, you're like, okay, I'll deal with this when I get back. But did they send you like one of those urgent emails, and it was kind of like, we need you to respond ASAP, or?
Yeah, so there was an email that came, and they asked if I could come in, and I said I can't. I'm in Montreal right now.
Yeah.
And then they said, "Can we call you tomorrow morning?" So that was the first day of the trip.
Yeah.
And it was my friend's bachelor party, and it just ruined everything for me.
That's a wild story. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like I've heard some other stories too, especially recently, people kind of taking time off and then they come back and they realize, okay, like layoffs are coming. And I feel like we're going into kind of a time right now where we're hearing layoffs almost like every other week. And obviously not that there were layoffs on your end, but just to speak to how unsecure a secure job might seem, right? You think you go to work every day and you're going to be serving your employer. And then you realize my job is finite, you know?
Absolutely. And at the end of the day, so being a part of the University of Waterloo co-op program, I got to go through a bunch of different jobs. And part of the reason why I realized I need to be self-employed is I always felt like I was just this tiny gear in a machine.
Yeah.
And I was hired to do one thing, which is a job. That's what it is. Oftentimes, especially when you start out, those jobs aren't really enjoyable. So sometimes they're not even enjoyable. I was just doing things that needed to be done, or I was doing things that nobody even cared about. And I actually experimented with that a little bit, like what would happen if I don't do my work for a week.
Mm.
And so
What happened?
honestly, nothing.
It's crazy. Someone's told me like a saying that's like, even when you pass away, your inbox will always be full. Just essentially, there's always going to be work to be done. As soon as you leave the organization, they're going to fill your spot. And yeah, it speaks to those organizations. They say, oh, we're family here, and it's not really like family, because family, you're ride or die. Like, obviously my brothers, my mom, we get into fights, but at the end of the day, like, there's nothing that's going to break that up. But with an employer, we're family. But then when it's inconvenient for them, or monetary things shift, you're out of that organization.
Absolutely. And I've seen it time and time again. Sometimes we didn't even think that there were going to be layoffs. Everything was good. And sometimes the decisions don't even come from the company. It comes from other places.
Yeah.
Like, for example, the current company that I'm working for, they had a round of layoffs that didn't come from them. It came from the company that owned them.
So there's always like a second level of stakeholders, or you're always appeasing somebody, right? That's not even your manager. You think you have great rapport with your manager, but then your whole department gets cut. And you're like, well, that rapport with my manager could only go as far as him, and it didn't go beyond him. So I think it just speaks to job security.
Absolutely.
So as you're making this this transition, what are some of the scariest parts that you see coming up to kind of working by yourself?
The scariest parts to working by myself. Well, here's the thing. I don't consider it me working by myself.
Okay.
Because I always have people in my network that are helping me out.
Yeah.
But really here's the thing. What I found is when I was working a job for somebody else, I'm hired to solve problems. I'm hired to make things happen. Now that I'm working on my own, it's the same thing. I'm still solving my problems, making things happen. So it's very, very similar. The main difference is at the end of the day, I'm paying myself.
Yeah.
And that security isn't necessarily the same as if somebody else was paying me bi-weekly or monthly.
So obviously I work for myself as well, so I think we can align to this. What kind of motivates you to get up in the morning, to really push through? Because I feel like when you have that secure paycheck, it feels a little more safe. You can kind of go throughout your day. But when you wake up and there's like, you set your own tasks, like how do you stay on track of everything? How do you keep pushing the mission forward?
Well, for me right now, it's using whatever time that I have. And really part of it is the passion. When you're doing something that you love, part of you just wants to spend time doing it. And then even the things that aren't as enjoyable. So for me, one of the things that I don't really love doing is social media. Even though I don't enjoy that side of the business, I still find myself wanting to do it, wanting to do better at it, just because I'm enjoying, I'm enjoying magic. I'm enjoying being creative, and I want to continue doing that. So I think part of it is just accepting that that if you want to run this as your business, you're going to have to actually work at it. And for me, when I started doing this, it was back in the pandemic when I decided, hey, I want to do it. I didn't have much direction. I didn't know how to go about doing it. Yeah. And because of that, I had a few gigs here and there, but I wouldn't call it a business. I would call it almost like a hobby.
Gotcha. I guess the difference between the two, the classic saying is like working on the business and working in the business, right? Obviously, you're a great performer and you perform magic, but then there's a whole business side to it. Can you kind of elaborate a little more on the difference between, working on the business and then working in the business?
Yeah, absolutely. So working on the business is kind of, I guess the best way to talk about this would be, as a magician, there's two sides to the business. There is the performance side of it, which is kind of the hobby. Magicians, and I find this with other people who are artsy as well, they enjoy doing that side of things where they have to create, they have to do things, and that's a lot of fun. I love learning new magic tricks. I love taking what I already know, changing it up, performing for people. What I find with magicians, and myself as well, a lot of us aren't really business people. We can work on the show, but we don't really work on the business. So that was one thing which I really had to learn. How do we work on the business? And what the business actually is, lead generation is the biggest part of it. You have to be able to go out and get new gigs because, hey, you might have a few for the holiday season, let's say for December, but then come January, what's going on? Yeah. So a big part of my business is reaching out to people, getting new leads, finding new avenues, new places where we could actually do a show. And then from there are other things as well, including reaching out to my current audience, making sure that they still know I'm alive. So when we are when they are ready to book me for an event, they know I'm still there. Yeah, one of the biggest parts is like always staying top of mind, right? Like making sure they know I'm still alive, I'm still here, I'm still offering a service. That's one of the things that I quickly came to realize, that when I got into the world of kind of career counseling, offering career services,
I think I run a great service. You know, my clients that I've served in the past, they really like my service, but it has to go on beyond that. Where is the next lead coming from? I can be the best career counselor in the world, but if I'm only a 3 out of 10 for a lead generator,
Yep.
there's no business. And, you know, you can have as many 5-star reviews on Google as you want, but if you're not getting more leads coming in, that's kind of where it dies. So you kind of really have to keep pushing that forward.
Absolutely. But the nice thing about running a business like this that I find is things snowball. When I started out, it was really hard getting these gigs and getting things going. But after a while, you start building your base. You have people that have regular things going. They're going to be reaching out to you. And from what I can tell, eventually it's going to be a state of just constantly having things going on. And that's what excites me. That's really, to answer your previous question, what makes me want to continue, what gets me up in the morning. Just knowing that eventually I'm going to be in a place where I'm always going to have something going on and it's going to be a fun life.
Yeah. There's something like really, I don't know, maybe like uncomfortable, but also kind of comfortable in the sense like, so just before we started this podcast, I got a lead that came in that said they wanted to sign up. Yep. And I was like, woke up this morning, okay, where's my next lead going to come from? How's the money coming in? It's a little slow for hiring in December. And then boom, when a lead comes in, it's just like, okay, you're running a viable business now. Like you really believe in kind of the efforts that you've been putting in this whole time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, incredible. And the one thing I wanted to highlight is we met in a networking group, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's one way that we're trying to generate leads. Tell me the benefit that you've had networking, not just in a business sense, but kind of across your whole career. And what I'm getting at here is I'd like to encourage younger individuals in college, coming to university, to start their own networking journey, whether that's even personal or professional. So if you could share your networking journey, I think that'd be cool too.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And it's kind of funny because I was watching your Instagram the other day and I saw a video about you talking about getting uncomfortable doing the cringe. And honestly, that's exactly what it is. So yeah, being a part of the co-op program, there were tons of opportunities for us to network with different companies. Mm-hmm. And here's the thing, not a lot of people know how to network properly. And I myself, I had to learn this as well. Sometimes it's not really about meeting someone and asking them immediately if they have any opportunities. Sometimes it's about building rapport, and down the road, like networking really is the long game. You're not really going to get anything short term, but when you build rapport with the right people, they're going to come to you when they have things because they trust you. And that's what it's about. But that doesn't mean that short-term networking is not a good idea. Honestly, when I was going through the co-op program, every time there was a networking event for different companies, whether it was Apple, Google, whatever, I was there and I was meeting people. I was just learning about different people's stories because I found that fascinating. You mentioned that my career hasn't really been linear, but it's honestly true for so many different people. There are people that just end up in tech or end up in different places and they weren't expecting to be there. Yeah. And that just fascinates me.
Yeah. It's funny, we're talking about linear career paths. Like we're at Seneca College right now, and this is the college that I graduated from, and I graduated with early childhood education. So I wanted to be a teacher growing up, and then I went down a whole world of tech sales, and then I found this ed tech software, and then that kind of pushed me into the world of career counseling. And I wouldn't have found all those opportunities if I just kind of kept my blinders on and said, no, I'm going to go from ECE to teachers college to teaching, and that's it, right? That was a linear path that I saw. But deviating from that path has honestly been the most fun and the most exciting. So
absolutely. And when I think about, how things were maybe 20 years ago, like when I think about my dad's career path, he ended up just picking a company and working there and moving up within that company until it was time to retire. And honestly, what I learned from his career path, his company ended up getting bought out by another company. They ended up treating those people that were bought really badly. Yep. And he ended up retiring and not having as much earning potential as he could have. So just even thinking about that whole jump, I think this whole non-linear, like doing things that excite you, doing things that are a bit different, and not just settling for one industry just because you know it, is so important.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. When I career coach individuals, the one thing they think they need is to have 100% alignment to the job description, right? They say, oh, I don't have, let's say, that one certificate, or I'm maybe 6 months shy in terms of work experience. And I'm like, go for it. You know, if you can just kind of state your value that you're bringing to the organization, talk about how your skills are transferable, because almost anything is a transferable skill, right? Like coming from your world, like even though you're selling magic, essentially, that's sales. Like if you really wanted to, I'm sure you could transfer to sort of any sort of sales role or any sort of project management role outside of your classic like areas where you've been working in recently.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is actually something interesting that I found when because I've been through so many different interviews.
Mm-hmm.
I found that when I get hired, well, especially when it's at an entry level job, they assume that everybody has some level of competency. Really, what sets you apart and what I found isn't really, well, one, you have to be able to do the job and you have to be able to talk in a way that makes it seem like you could do the job.
Mm-hmm.
But what I find is that I get hired because people want to work with me.
Yeah.
And why do people want to work with me? Because really we start chatting about other stuff during the interview.
Yeah.
I always make it a point to talk a little bit about my hobbies. I would even show a magic trick and that would get people excited, like, hey, we need this guy on our team. It's going to be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that doesn't mean take it too far and be unprofessional,
Mm-hmm.
but doing it in a way that shows your personality, your character
Mm-hmm.
while you're interviewing is really my key to getting these interviews.
Absolutely. And I think you said it perfectly there. It's showing like your personality, and there's no real like set kind of guidelines. Should I show 50% personality, 50% professionalism, or should I go all personality? And that's something you have to figure out as an individual. When I career coach individuals, when we're getting prepped for these interviews, a lot of them want a script when they go into the interview. And I'm like, well, this isn't going to be you. Yeah. You know, we're not going to write a script. We'll write some bullet points and have some things that we can talk to and expand on. But the closer we can get it to a conversation, the better chances you are going to get hired, because people hire people. People want to hire someone that they know they can, sit at the lunch table with and have a genuine conversation. They don't want to hire like an employee robot, essentially, right?
Absolutely. So one thing that I was wondering, how do you go about with your clients, stopping them from being nervous in these interviews?
One of the ways I stop them from being nervous is definitely interview preparation. We research about the company, so we know kind of what the values of the company are, and we understand the organization that we're entering. We do some research. With the power of LinkedIn, you could really search anybody that's in a professional setting. So everyone that's in the position of an interviewer has a LinkedIn page. So we can now get familiar, sort of what are they talking about? What do they post about? Obviously we're not going to find out everything, but we find a little bit. And I find these little nuggets of information make us more comfortable. There's never going to be an interview where you go in and you're just 100% lax, and I almost wouldn't want someone to be too lax. Yes. I feel like you should sit up straight, you should kind of be excited for the position, but if you truly believe that you're the individual for that job, if you genuinely want that job, that's a big thing too. We only apply for jobs that we actually want to get, so when it comes time to interview for them, we're excited to go for the interview, and that's half the battle. So a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B there, but kind of all those put together is kind of the way that we prepare for an interview.
Yeah, that's great. As a magician, even with the most experienced magicians that I know, they still get nerves sometimes when they go on stage. The nerves never go away.
Yeah.
I find for me, what really helps is knowing the first few things I'm going to say and the last few things I'm going to say. When I have those down, it just automatically starts and I'm able to think and adapt while I'm talking to people.
Yeah. That's wild. Tell me about I always once upon a time I tried stand-up comedy for a whole 3 times. I feel like everyone that's kind of like thinks they're funny or a class clown a little bit thinks they can do stand-up. But man, the nerves just humbled me. I didn't really get past that 3rd time, but tell me like the first time you got up on stage, like what that was like and overcoming those like initial jitters and pushing through.
The first time I ever performed on stage was probably in high school for a talent show. And it kind of stopped me from going on stage for a really long time. So yeah, I did a card trick that involved burning a card. And what I didn't realize is that the whole place is going to smell like smoke and ash.
Yeah.
And so I did it. We had to open up the windows. The trick went well, but I felt that I didn't have my scripting down. So it was kind of disjointed. We didn't really know exactly what was going on, but the reveal was nice. I did get a huge clap.
Nice.
But at the same time, I thought, you know what? This is a bit too much. I'm probably not going to do this for a long time. And it did take me probably about 4 or 5 years before I was ready to try it again.
Incredible. Wow. So from high school, that was like your first time, and then I'm assuming you're going into college now, university.
Yep.
You're still doing magic. You still kept up with the craft.
Yep.
What was your next time on stage? Like, when were you like, you know what? I think I have a talent in me that I can monetize and really do this on my own.
So when I was in university, I did a few shows for different companies here and there
Yeah.
for Christmas parties and stuff. But before I even got there, I ran the Magic Club at the university.
Oh, cool.
So that was a place where I really got to just hang out with other magicians that were doing the same thing. Also, people that just saw me at the clubs fair, saw me doing magic, and they're like, "Hey, I want to try learning that." So there, I got the chance to teach a lot of people, and that was a lot of fun as well. I think through doing that, you just slowly build up your confidence. And then at some point when I saw opportunities come in, like I think one of them was for Desire to Learn. I'm not sure if that company still exists these days.
Okay.
They were based in Waterloo, but they had a Christmas party and they were hiring magicians for it. So I came out to that. Other things which I did as well was I actually had, I had a friend who ran a board game cafe in Waterloo. I told him, hey, let us come in, perform. The Magic Club, come in,
Nice.
perform. It'll be a good way to get my members some experience in front of groups, and you'll have a killer event. So that's kind of how, thinking about it off the top of my head, I think part of it is just wanting to do more and not really being afraid of exactly what we were talking about before, just getting uncomfortable. I know that I'm never going to be good right away, but the more times I put myself out there, the better I'm going to get.
Yeah. It truly is. Like the more reps you do, like it's, everyone knows it, the more reps you do, the better you're going to get overall. But it's just like staying with that consistency and continually, pushing forward. And I kind of say that out loud now because that's something that I'm trying to do right now, right? Like I'm 1 year into my business and growing this, going on to year 2, and it's like, okay, what are the reps that we can do that consistently get results, and then how can we expand this to other endeavors? And it's kind of a fine balance of persistence and learning and always trying to grow.
Yeah, there was I'm just remembering this right now. There was one I think it was my second co-op job that I ever did. Right at the beginning, I met with the CEO and I scheduled a meeting with him because I wanted to sit down with him for a moment and just learn about his journey because he graduated from the same university.
Okay.
And one of the things that stuck with me was he told me that there are going to be things that you don't want to do, but that is kind of taking your medicine. And when you do that, you're eventually going to get better. And yeah, that's kind of what it is. Now, keeping that in mind, I wouldn't say, for me personally, I think working at a job for somebody else and sort of taking my medicine and doing what needs to be done, yes, it will make me better, but it wouldn't ever get me to the point that I'd be happy or satisfied.
Yeah.
Just something to keep in mind.
I think that's some great advice that CEO gave you.
Yeah.
Throughout your journey, have you ever had any sort of like mentors in your life that played a significant role? And if so, what kind of role did they play?
Absolutely. So that's a really good question, and it kind of aligns a lot with what you do. So when I started making that jump from my full-time job to being a magician, I had no direction. So I spent 1 year just pretty much telling people, I'm trying to move into becoming a full-time magician, but I wasn't really doing anything behind the scenes to get there.
Yeah.
Or the stuff that I was doing wasn't really getting me closer to where I needed to be. So one thing which I realized is, hey, I need to get more education on how to run my own business, how to actually be a successful magician. So I ended up taking a course. It was with a company out in the UK, and it was run by a couple of magicians that were pretty successful over there. So I did that, paid about $5,000 to get in and do it. And then afterwards, it gave me enough direction to be able to do virtual shows during the pandemic, which was great.
Nice.
But virtual shows were tough because you're pretty much taking this. Well, magic is a three-dimensional art,
Mm-hmm.
and you're boiling it down to 2 dimensions because all people can see is that screen. And then the worst thing about being on a platform like Zoom is everybody can mute themselves and everybody can turn off their cameras. So you have no clue if people are having a good time. And even if you tell them, like, show your faces, it's not scary, we're not recording.
Yeah.
People still don't want to do that.
Of course.
So that was the toughest part about virtual shows. But from there, I did that a bit, and then I wasn't really getting more gigs. So I thought, hey, there has to be something else I could do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I met my first business coach. So one of the things that I really found, well, my understanding of running a business or just trying to do a bit more with, it doesn't even have to be a business. It could be just doing more with your career,
Mm-hmm.
is working with people that have already done it.
Yeah.
Or working with people that know how to get it done. So
Yeah.
that's really what it's about. So my business coach, his name is Craig Petty. He's a successful magician out in the UK. He has a multi-million-dollar business. I meet with him twice a month.
Yeah.
And he's been kind of guiding me, showing me how I need to market myself, how I need to get leads,
Mm-hmm.
how I need to make my show better. And just through the year of working with him, honestly, there are times when I tell him, hey, I don't feel like I'm moving along.
Mm-hmm.
And he reminds me, hey, you did this, and this. You did
Yeah.
so much. You have to really think about where you are now and where you were when you started.
I completely agree with that. You have to kind of realize, the progress that you have made over the year. And even though it might be like slow progress, it's still progress, right? And I think it's that compounded over the years that are going to amount to kind of where we're going to want to go and where we want to take our business.
Absolutely. So he is my first mentor in my magic business, but then I ended up getting another business coach as well.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that I've split this up is I have one, my first business coach helps me with the overall business. So how to make my show better, how to market myself. And the second business coach is helping me with sales.
Mm-hmm.
And those two are different, but very important. And you need both to run the business.
Yeah.
So the second business coach that I have, his name is Ashley Green.
Amazing.
Also located in the UK. He has a successful magic business as well, and he knows sales inside and out. And everything is about really word of mouth, which is the scariest thing for me, being able to go to people and sell myself. And
Yeah.
so he really helps with that, and it's been a fun journey for sure.
Yeah. Sales is definitely like a crazy sector of every business. And I started doing software sales, so there was a lot of cold calls, a lot of cold emails. Then you're doing live demos over Zoom, and you're always trying to get that sale at the end of the day. But it's a fine balance between being salesy and pushy and actually providing value and giving them something that's going to solve like their problem or provide a solution for what they're looking for.
Yep. And what I found is that through having these business coaches, there are times when I'm just getting off track and they're able to steer me back on what's most important.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's been, like, for example, not recently, maybe a few months ago,
Mm-hmm.
there were some clients that I was trying to land some big business with.
Mm-hmm.
And I told Ashley, I don't think they're interested. I think I just need to let this go, because I reached out to them a few times and they stopped responding.
Yeah.
And Ashley kind of helped me rethink my mindset
Mm-hmm.
as to, why do you think this means it's dead? Did they say no?
Yeah.
Until they say no, that you're still good.
Absolutely.
And that kind of changed my whole mindset on everything.
Yeah. I mentioned earlier that I got one of the leads book with me today, and that person met with me. I think they met with me at the end of June, and this was someone I was going back and forth with. We're talking about resumes, talking about potential job opportunities she can go into, and she was on the fence about it, and just kind of everything aligned. I have an email campaign that goes out monthly, so you try to stay top of mind. That's one of the sales things. Yep. But like you said, I didn't stop after. She didn't say no. She said, I'm going to think about it. And I just kind of stayed top of mind, stayed persistent, and always tried to add value. I've never really sent anything that was like, hey, you ready to buy now? But it's like, here's a resume review, here's what to say in your next job interview, and just giving tips along the way. Mm-hmm. So if you can show a prospect that you can add value or provide like a really great service that they're going to enjoy, I feel like it's just a matter of time until they pull the trigger.
It's so true. And sometimes people are just busy. Life gets in the way.
Mm-hmm.
But I find that a lot of times people do come back, mm-hmm. especially if they see the value that you're providing.
Absolutely. So you mentioned that you made like a $5,000 investment into yourself essentially when you got that initial coach. One of the hardest things that I had to come to terms with was spending money on myself that I didn't 100% know was going to get a return, right? Yep. So I got a business coach too, and it's between $5,000 and like $10,000 that we're spending on these coaches. So it's just difficult in that sense of knowing like, is this going to return into something? So what was your deciding factor when you're like, I'm going to pull the trigger, I'm going to spend the money, and we're going to see how this works?
I knew that I couldn't do this on my own because I tried doing it on my own and I had no clue how to do it.
Yeah.
So I knew that I needed somebody to just guide me to get started. Mm-hmm. That was my thought with taking the course. And once again, I didn't even have the money to do it. I had to reach out to my parents, and luckily at the time my dad had a little bit that was coming in through a tax return. And I asked him, hey, look, I really want to do this.
Yeah.
Can you help me out?
Yeah.
And I was surprised that he said yes.
Incredible.
That was probably the biggest thing that got me from there to here, just taking that first step.
Yeah. Yeah, making that investment, it's it's always going to be, I'm not going to say it's always worth it, but if you're going to put your absolute all into it and someone else is going to complement that with how much they're going to help you and they're going to bring their expertise, it's almost a win-win scenario because you're not going to stop because you refuse to give up, right? And I feel like if you refuse to give up and keep pushing forward, eventually those results are going to amalgamate into something.
Absolutely. And at the end of the day, I think even like if you don't end up getting a business coach or don't end up taking a course mm-hmm. or doing anything like that, you could probably still get from not having a business to having a successful business. But you're going to spend a lot of time reinventing the wheel and going around in circles. Yes. And what could have probably taken you 6 months to do or a year to do is going to take you maybe 2 years or 3 years down the road.
Yeah.
So really what I thought is having a business coach, doing this is kind of my cheat codes into really cutting through the noise.
Yes.
And so I think for anybody looking to start, that's probably the most important, because the other thing that happens as well is when you start and things don't go well, you're going to get demotivated.
Yeah.
And it's easier to fall off the wagon if you just don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so a few more questions and we're going to wrap up here.
Sure.
I just wanted to talk to you about what potential do you see in the Toronto Magic community?
That's a great question, because right now, Magic is probably the more popular than it's ever been before.
Okay.
So when you think about it, on America's Got Talent, Britain's Got Talent, pretty much most TV shows, talent shows, there's a magician.
Yeah.
And those magicians aren't just at the beginning and they drop off. They make it all the way to like the top 3.
Yeah.
Magic is more popular with people now more than ever. And it's something that just is going to continue. Mm-hmm. I've been seeing a few places in Toronto that are doing weekly magic shows.
Yeah.
And I see that continuing as well. One of the things that I've been doing as well is I've been working with certain restaurants on a weekly basis to bring in some magic. So there's a few things for me that I think are really exciting. They're going to come in next year. But in terms of magic as a whole, it's strong, and it's stronger now more than ever.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. The one thing I like about magic, it's that like it's almost like a hypnotizing form of entertainment. Like you're really like completely immersed, especially the way that I've seen you do it. It's really exciting, and I like how you bring the audience into it. I like how there's a lot of engagement in your shows. Tell me about your styling of magic.
Yeah, well, magic is, well, when you think about live entertainment, most live entertainment are things that you watch. You don't really interact. Sure, there are things where you do interact, like you go to a comedy show, maybe the comedian's going to roast the audience, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But that's not something that everybody wants to be a part of.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to magic, and I'm not talking about on stage, when you talk about close-up magic, where a magician is going around from group to perform,
Mm-hmm.
you get this personal touch, this personal interaction. So when I perform for people, I always try to learn more about them, learn a bit about what they're doing, and I incorporate that into my tricks. And I always leave them with a souvenir, something that they can't explain, something that they'll keep on their shelf and be like, yeah, a few years ago that happened. And it's just so bizarre that I had to keep this right over here.
Yeah. I think when you perform like really well, especially with close-up magic, that's going to be like the best word-of-mouth referral, because they're going to go home or they're going to go to someone that they know and be like, man, my mind was blown the other night. Like, this happened. Can you believe this? So I feel like that's a good form of referrals.
Yeah, absolutely. And really, I think for me, the big thing is I always try to bring people to my social media.
Yeah.
So I have tricks that involve my social media. And then from there, I'm able to pretty much get them as part of my audience, but also start a conversation with them. So when I work at restaurants, I work as a magician. One of the things which I do is I will ask them the next day, how was the night? Did you have a good time? Can you leave a review for this restaurant? So that's a way of me adding value to my employer, the venue that booked me.
Incredible. You really have to think selflessly, right? Especially you want to call back to that restaurant. You want to make sure the patrons come back to that restaurant, even if it's just to eat there, not even to see you. You want to make sure everyone is kind of still moving, right?
Yeah.
I think that's a great one. So my last question here, to someone contemplating a career change, how do you recommend they start?
That's a good question. For me, I knew that I wanted to move to be self-employed.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew that there are a few things that I really enjoyed doing. I really loved magic, so I thought that was a good opportunity. Also for me, I really loved board games and puzzles. So I thought that was another avenue that I could go down as well.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, what I kind of decided was I can't do everything. I need to pick one, and I need to learn as much as I can about it. The one piece of advice I would give to anybody looking to do something like that, don't spend too much time collecting knowledge. You need to just go out and do stuff. When you sit there collecting a lot of knowledge, what ends up happening is you end up wasting time.
Yeah.
When I think about some of the things that I did, I felt that I could have probably got started a few months earlier or a year earlier, but I was just too afraid to take that first leap. So don't be afraid to, well, definitely do your research, but don't be afraid to take that first step, and don't use the excuse of just, I need to research more before you get started.
I completely agree. And one of the things I say to my clients is they're looking at so many jobs and so many opportunities. It's paralysis by analysis, where you just analyze as many things and you never make a decision, and you're in the same spot and you never actually started. Mm-hmm. Amazing. Arieze, this has been great. Where can people find you? Where can we go to learn about everything the Colourblind Magician?
Well, you could find me on my Instagram at the Colourblind Magician. That's color with a U. It's kind of funny, I have to point that out, even though we're in Canada. The colourblindmagician.com is another place where you can reach out. Also, to all your viewers, if anybody has any questions about any of this, feel free to get in touch with me. My email address is Arieze, that's ARIEZE at thecolourblindmagician.com. Would love to chat and help you out however I can.
Amazing. Arieze, has been great. Thank you so much, dude.
Thank you for having me.